My name is Alan Moore. I work with Korn Ferry. I'm the global lead for executive coaching.
Okay, and what does that mean exactly?
It means a piece of our business is executive coaching, coaching executive leaders in large organizations. We have about 500 coaches in 70 different cities and offices around the world and provide thousands of hours of executive coaching to top leaders.
And do coaches work primarily individually or in teams or both? Or?
Coaches work both individually and in teams, but the vast majority of the coaching we do is one-to-one coaching.
Mm-hmm. And does it tend to be in person or by telecom or what?
I think that's one of the trends. Is coaching is traditionally an in-person, face-to-face activity over a longer period of time. We're seeing some changes in the field where coaching now is as likely as not to be done remotely. And by remotely, that means by telephone or by some other means such as video or an online type of connection. Mm-hmm. Also, it's done in shorter increments than in the past. So you may initially have a longer coaching time with somebody that's spent face-to-face getting to know them and build rapport, but as the engagement goes on, it could be as small as a 10-minute telephone call here and there to give the person some tips or help them along with a question.
Do you have an opinion as to why it's going in that direction?
I think the world is moving toward everything being shorter and faster and to the point. So our conversations are that way, coaching is that way. People seem to have less time. They're pulled in so many different directions. They want to spend less time on their development and reflection. So as coaching, like everything else, if we can provide a lot, something is really rich in a short amount of time, that's what's useful.
Okay. What kinds of things do you use in your programs as data gathering and initial information in a new engagement?
Mm-hmm. Coaching always works best when you have some data coming into the engagement and then probably some measures again after the engagement is done. So you can look at net differences. The data coming into the coaching is helpful for the coach to get to know the person that we're going to be working with. So that might be personality data, might be some kind of assessment data. It could just be a 360 from within their organization or nothing more than their recent performance review. When we come in as a coach, we'll look at what data is available. We might decide to gather some other type of data. One type of assessment that's very popular, especially in the executive ranks, is doing a verbal 360. And what that means is we'll ask the person that we're coaching who are some of the key stakeholders around them. Probably in a 360 variable, their boss, their direct reports, their peers, and get the names of those stakeholders and then do 30-minute telephone interviews with those folks or go out and meet those folks face-to-face and ask, as we're coaching John, and you've known John for a while, what are some of his strengths? What are some development areas? What do you like best? What should he keep doing? What's something he might do differently? I think that serves a couple of purposes. As a coach, it gives us a more holistic view of John than just John's representation to us. It gives other people's views of him. The other thing it does, it helps engage that community around him in the coaching process. Because we might also ask, and how would you be willing to support John in his development journey? We know that John lives in relationship and lives in context with these stakeholders, so that helps bring that into the coaching process.
Do you see any trends in use or lack of or decreasing use of sort of more of the formal assessments that we've seen so much of in the past few years, or no change really?
I think as we move forward, there will be even more assessments. Big data, you hear a lot about big data as a trend, and that applies to coaching as well. People want more data gathering about the coaching process, so there'll be more assessments at the front end, perhaps in the middle part, and at the end. Mm-hmm. One trend that's in coaching is moving more toward being purchased by the purchasing department or the procurement group, and they want to look at some of that data. So how many people are you coaching, how frequently, how many sessions have you had, of what length, and what impact is it having on the organization. So having formalized processes of assessment before, during, and after coaching is one of the growing trends.
Yeah, I would assume that it makes the measurement a little bit more efficient.
It makes the measurement process more efficient. I don't know, personally speaking, if it's always as humane. A lot of coaching is personal work. It's helping people work on things that are deep and value-driven or belief system-driven, and I don't know that all that can always show up in a measurement system. Others might feel differently from me about it. But my hope is that measurement assists us in coaching and is helpful in coaching rather than measurement becomes a replacement for some of the deeper work that we do with people.
Can you tell me a little bit about your coaching career and how you got to where you are now?
First half of my career was spent in business leadership. So I was with one of the world's largest healthcare companies in charge of international marketing and international business. So I had a chance to live in Europe and Asia for quite a few years and learn what it's like to build teams or to run teams and to do that in different types of environments and different cultures, and that was very useful. I ended up living in Japan and working with an OD firm there that was helping to build the culture in our company as we went through a merger and acquisition. I found that work really fascinating. So when I left the healthcare company, I went over to work with them and started doing the OD work that involved some personal coaching. From there, I went off and got the education that was required to go along with that and learned a lot about it. I found it really rewarding, and having had the first half of my career in business and business leadership and now the second half in coaching, being able to put those two together in terms of coaching business leaders gives me the understanding of their environment and some of the challenges they have, plus the tools that go along with coaching to help people.
I think increasingly we're seeing that base of knowledge in what it's like to be the client in the environment that they're in, or the ability to at least understand it, is increasingly important. You can't do this in a vacuum.
There's a little bit of a dilemma. Often business leaders come to us and say, hey, do you have a coach that's worked in my industry, that's worked in my function, that's worked in my job, that's worked in my company? In fact, do you have a coach that's me?
Yeah,
do you have
exactly.
a coach that's been me? And that makes it really difficult because we don't, and it's not the same set of skills. Mm-hmm. You want someone who's really good at coaching. You don't necessarily want someone who's the best CFO to coach a CFO. You want a great coach to do that. I think our clients and even coaches have a hard time wrestling with that dilemma of what's exactly the background that we need. You've probably heard the old saying in coaching that if you have a heart attack, you don't want to go out and find the person who's had the most number of heart attacks to be your doctor. You want to find the person that's the best surgeon or the best internist to work with you, because they're different skills. And we try to promote that as well. The coach needs to have an understanding of the business and understanding of the industry, but we don't need to have a deep expertise. If you want that as a client, you should be hiring a consultant rather than a coach. Coaches aren't there to give you the answers. We're there to provoke and question and help you along your development journey.
Let me pick up from that one. Do you have a favorite definition of coaching?
I think there's more than one definition of coaching rather than having a favorite. Okay. There's a lot of dimensions of coaching. Sometimes we're coaching people for performance, and that might be the essence, is to help people get better at doing what they're doing right here and right now. Sometimes we're coaching people for development, toward accelerating towards some future position, or sometimes we're coaching people on their career and their career trajectory. So because coaching is a foundational approach toward many ends, I think then possibly it has many different definitions.
Where do you think the profession is moving? Where do you think the edges are, or the growing edges are?
I think there's a number of trends that are impacting coaching, the same ones that are impacting businesses. We could condense that down to maybe four major ones. There's a lot of globalization that's happening, meaning that things are connected across the whole world rather than just being local. And when we make decisions, that's impacting people in a lot of different places. Businesses are running that way, and it means as coaches, often we're talking to people in networks that are spread out all over the world. When I'm coaching folks these days, that set of stakeholders that we're interviewing around them might be in Shanghai and Tokyo and Russia and Paris and Brazil, in the same way that executive's job runs in all those areas. So globalization is one of those trends. Diversity is certainly one of those that goes right hand in hand with the globalization. So the folks I'm coaching are from more diverse backgrounds. Also, their teams are quite a bit more diverse. So their teams are scattered, their teams are coming from multiple countries. What that means is you've got different points of views, different universal truths involved, different cultures involved. And as a coach, we need to come to understand what all those are. And as we're coaching leaders, we need to coach those leaders to hold those multiple truths in mind at the same time, rather than thinking that there are single best answers or unidimensional cultural ways of looking at things. Mm-hmm. So we've got the globalization and the diversity. We've also got data and technology and speed that come into play. Everything is faster, as we said earlier. Everything is digitized. Everything is based on data. And I think in some ways businesses try to rationalize every decision, and yet we know that decisions are also emotionally driven. So as we're coaching leaders, it's how do I balance those two things? How can I use data and leverage data and yet not be distracted by all the data that's coming in? How do I maintain focus? In that, one of the trends that's happening in coaching is coaching people more on presence and on centeredness, on mindfulness, even on vitality, because leaders are often so distracted and so overwhelmed by all the data and information that's out there.
Mm-hmm. What kind of training are your coaches? What are the kind of trends there, I guess is what I'm asking.
Trends
in training coaches.
In training coaches.
Yeah. Or it may not be appropriate to what you do in your business, but...
I think our clients have higher and higher expectations of coaches. Most of our coaches have 10 years or more experience in coaching. Most come from a business background plus a psychology or a coaching background, and have put those two things together. So we'll see a lot of coaches that are later stage in their career. So I think that a lot of life experience comes into play in terms of being a coach. Coaching is growing more complex, so you have to have a lot more tools in the toolkit these days. You have to be able to take a cognitive approach to coaching. You have to be able to take an emotional intelligence approach to coaching. You need to draw on the theories of many theorists and have many different ways of approaching coaching, because our clients' issues they're working with are complex, and therefore our level of intervention also needs to be complex. They like to say that coaching 101 is over. Just the basics are still just the basics, and they work, but they're no longer sufficient. They're not enough to take care of the issues that we work with.
Yeah, it would seem to me too that the increasing diversity and the increasing multiculturalism creates a need for additional skills and additional awareness.
When we work with people from different cultures and different backgrounds and in different countries, your training as a coach can't just come from the university nor from a book. Part of that's the life experience, or the real life experience of having lived abroad or having lived in different cultures, having lived with different languages. When I interviewed our coaches recently, and asked them what they think they need more of or what they wish they had more of, a lot of it is having that experience of living abroad or having that experience in living in other cultures, because it's the only way we come to understand those mindsets or their ways of thinking about things.
Well, it's kind of like learning a language. The immersion really is the best way to do it. Yeah.
Being immersed in the culture
also
helps you to see yourself more plainly. One of the things I learned about living abroad is it takes you out of your own culture and allows you to look back at your culture from a different perspective. I think the more often we do that, we can get an objective view of any culture.
Good. If you were to give some advice to someone, let's say second career, moving into coaching from a business basis, looking to expand their toolkit or their skill set, what would you say?
Someone who's coming into coaching from a business background.
With some life experience and some good business experience, let's say, because that tends to be most of who we have.
I think the life experiences are important. I've worked with coaches that have gone off to the best coaching schools in the world, and if they don't have the life experience to draw on or the wisdom of the life experience, it makes them rather shallow or just textbooky in their approach to coaching. I've worked with some folks that have very good life experience and don't have the formal education, let's say, of coaching, and they can often do very well as a coach. There's an intuitive aspect to what they're doing. As I said earlier about coaching growing more complex, though, it's nice to have a lot of tools in the toolkit and be able to draw on those. Otherwise, if you're not trained or not skilled in a variety of tools, then when you show up, whatever the client's issue is, you're trying to frame it down into the one solution that you know, rather than staying open and sitting with it and thinking, now what's the best way for us to go forward together? So by learning a lot of tools, it gives you a lot more options as a coach as how to work with this person.
Mhm.